Peter Ducharme from Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, could you start by telling us a little bit about this recently published studies from Bridge Over Troubled Waters about youth homelessness and its effect on the young people that you serve? Tell us a little bit about your methods and your findings.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. I think research at Bridge has been relatively new over the last 4 or 5 years, where we've really been fortunate to develop this great partnership with Mass General Brigham and the Department of Psychiatry over there. And I always say what kind of started our research is that we know that young adults experiencing homelessness is tremendously common. 1 out of 10 young adults 18 to 24 and 1 out of 30 young adults 14 to 17 will experience housing instability at some point. So it is very common, but despite how common it is, there's actually not a ton of research out there. And so we really started kind of partnering with the folks at Mass General, and particularly Colin Burke, who's a psychiatrist over there, to really say, how can we start and just characterize, be able to describe who are these young people that are coming into Bridge? What are the types of kind of behavioral health or psychiatric issues are they experiencing? And then how does that relate to the care that we're able to provide and really the treatment and where they go on from Bridge from here?
Right. Like you said, there's not a lot of studies and information about this very vulnerable group of people. So you said this sort of is an ongoing initiative. Where did you guys get the idea to start doing this research, and do you plan to continue it?
Yeah, so like I said, we really wanted to start and characterize the group. So the first study that we did actually was a psychiatric characterization where we did a semi-structured interview with 140 young adults that were staying at Bridge. And this interview really goes through all of the possible diagnoses in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychiatric Disorders, and to really get at like what are the prevalence of disorders like substance use, depression, anxiety, PTSD. What's the prevalence of that among the young people that we serve? And what are they experiencing while they're staying with us? And so that was kind of where we started with the idea of saying down the road, as we're developing other studies, how might we be able to come up with more targeted interventions specifically for the young people that we're seeing? So, for example, one of the things that we've always known is that young people, when they come into Bridge, experience a wide range of issues. And so it's never, oh, it's just depression or it's just anxiety. It's always much more than that. And so to try to come up with specific therapies or specific sort of residential programs that can meet everybody's need was always incredibly challenging. But in this first study that we did, one of the things that we realized is that there's actually kind of four big clusters that young people would fall into. And so, for example, one cluster was actually no behavioral health issues at all. So, young people that would come in, they're experiencing housing instability, but from a psychiatric or behavioral health perspective, didn't meet for any psychiatric conditions, right? And then there was another cluster of young people that were experiencing really high levels of substance use disorders, but low levels of kind of everything else, right? And then there was a third cluster of young people that were experiencing kind of a lot of comorbidity. So a mix of depression, anxiety, substance use, PTSD. And then we had people that were like just experiencing depression alone. And so this was really interesting for us because it really showed broadly we can start to think about young people coming in terms of these four areas and how we could design support specifically for like those clusters or those young people. So knowing that a young person that comes in that has high levels of substance use going on, but not a lot of other things, versus a young person that comes in that has a lot of comorbidity, is dealing with substance use, but also depression, anxiety, PTSD. We can try to come up with supports for those two distinct groups of young people. And so that's kind of like in the future, what we're really hoping to develop our research to really look at what are those resources and specific interventions we might be able to develop and then pilot out and ultimately study.
Right, and having that information is invaluable. I see this a lot across a lot of organizations that we talk to at BNN, where the only way that you can serve the people that you want to serve is if you know what they're going through and you are able to see their needs.
Absolutely. And we find the same thing. And so, obviously, we always want to be doing evidence based practices, things that we know are well validated and that really work for the young people that we serve. But at the same time, the young people that we serve are so unique that it's hard to always identify what those strategies are. So, this helps to move us in that direction.
Right, absolutely. And these studies are so important for that. And you've learned so much already. You're going through your findings and your methods. Are you planning to make any changes or explore different methods of research, different sectors of research to assist, further assist the youth that you care for?
Yeah. So first, I always say all the research that we do at Bridge, we really hope that it helps to inform our clinical care that we provide, right? So we've already started to kind of inform some of the practices that we are already currently doing. And so, for example, for young adults in particular, one of the things that we're really trying to do is really open their minds up to the possibility that not everything is kind of black and white, right? So you take something like substance use disorders, and for us, we're really trying to show, not to say to somebody, well, you have a problem or you don't have a problem, but more get people to consider, when might something become a problem?
Mm.
And so, one of the things that we learned in that initial study when we looked at resiliency among people is that strong social connectedness, right? Having people that you can trust and rely on and go to under any circumstances was a real protective factor against suicidality and self injury.
Mm.
Right. So that was one of the first things we learned. So in some of our other interventions where we're working around substance use disorders, one of the things that we've started to build in is exposing people to different pathways of recovery, right? So in hopes that they can then experience these different pathways where hopefully that helps to build social connectedness. As Elizabeth Jackson, our CEO, always says, Bridge is like the university of life skills.
Mm.
And so, like any university, people leave eventually. And so we want to make sure when people leave that they have many social connections and networks that they've been exposed to that they can then build on when they move on from Bridge. So in many ways, like thinking about the research that we've done, that's like a direct way we've been able to incorporate that into our practice. One, like helping young people to understand the more social connections outside of Bridge, the better. And then two, being able within our practices to expose people to what those networks are. So for example, we'll take people over to the Phoenix Sober Gym, where it's a whole gym community doing fitness and exercise, but around recovery. We take people to all of the local recovery clubs that are funded through the Department of Public Health, where they have all pathways recovery groups and 12-step meetings, but then other recreation activities, where these are kind of long-term supports for people where young folks here can continue to build those social connections.
Absolutely, and connection is the key to prospering as young people. We need to be able to know that we have a network of people that we can reach out to and that want the best for us. So could you please tell our viewers where they can learn more about Bridge?
Yep, so our website is probably the best place, which is bridgeotw.org. You can find everything right there. And if you go to bridgeotw.org/research, that'll take you to all of our research, links to our latest publications, and all the current projects that we have going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for joining us today. Thank you for coming back, for collaborating with us at BNN today. We love to collaborate with Bridge, so thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.